No pressure at all, right? No pressure. I've spoken after some very thoughtful, inspiring athletes in my life, but I've never spoken after somebody who's got me convinced there's something physically wrong with me. Are you guys glad to know 30 minutes after lunch why your stomach's feeling a little stretched right now? Thank you, Chris. And Mal, thanks for the invitation. What a great process this has been going through. I looked in my files, and I didn't have a speech on better men, on being a better man. So the process of figuring out what that looks like and what my life has been family-wise and vocation-wise and what being a better man means has been a good one. Something we all, hopefully, you're reflecting on that today and thinking about doing that for yourself. For me, it always seems that an opportunity to be a better man comes when there's problems, when there's adversity. My wife and I, high school sweethearts, and got married, and our son was born, and he went on to graduate from APU. For those of you in the room from APU, yeah. And then my daughter was born. She was 5 weeks premature and had cerebral palsy. Actually, she was blind for the first year of her life. My wife jokes that she was praying for average children, and in Eric we got somebody who's excelled at everything, and in Kelly we got someone who has struggled with everything, and so they average out, she says. But after we got married, we got through the challenge of us having a mixed marriage. My wife went to UCLA. So we were able to fight through that together. So we, as we looked at Kelly and we thought of what we needed to do to care for her, and tremendous loss of hope and passions and things that you think that your daughter's going to grow up and do. And the two things that I discovered, one was that Kelly was a unique creation of God, that she had a special purpose in life, that she touches people in a way that no one else touches people. It's absolutely remarkable. The second thing I learned was that I don't have to fix it. And for us guys, don't we want to fix everything? No matter what the problem is, we want to fix it. We know we have a solution. And don't get me wrong, I tried to fix it. We tried every doctor, surgeries, different medications, but the minute that I discovered that I don't need to fix it, I need to care for her, love her, provide for her the best quality of life that we are capable of doing, was an incredible release, was an incredible appreciation for God's creation and for God's plan as we move forward. So that was 31 years ago. And so 31 years of advocating for Kelly, of her being a part of our life. She still lives with us. Getting a hug, a Kelly hug at our church is a big deal. Not only do you get an incredible hug, but she's really strong and you get a back adjustment while you're at it. So Kelly had an incredible impact on our lives personally. She had an incredible impact on my life vocationally. I had grown up in television production. I grew up to be a sports producer, had a chance to produce live sporting events and live 3-hour football telecast can be a hotbed of activity. As I grew up as a production assistant and associate director, I grew up in an era where producers and directors would yell and scream at cameramen for missing a shot. I decided when I became a producer that I would run a more productive and a better truck. And so we developed this little program where we had 6 boxes. And when there was a human error made, and there's going to be human errors in a 3-hour live telecast. When there's a human error made, we'll check a box and we'll write down what it was. And everybody on the crew knew that we were going to review it after the telecast. There was a writer one time who observed this and watched our crew. And by the way, we were the most popular truck in the business. Everybody wanted to work. I just can't imagine why. But everybody wanted to work for our team. And so a writer asked me, who was watching our production, how do you stay so calm in that hotbed of activity? And my response, which I hadn't thought of before that, but I realized that I had an unfair advantage. Every night that we tucked Kelly to bed, I got a new perspective, a renewed perspective of what's important and what's not, what's worth getting mad about and what's not worth getting mad about. So that kind of set the tone for the rest of my career. I produced a special on Special Olympics that got me involved in Special Olympics. That was because of my daughter, but it was also because Prime Ticket at the time wanted notoriety, and we were looking for something to win an Emmy, which we did. And as I tell people, it had very little to do with my production capabilities. It had everything to do with courage, determination, joy. You can't watch those images, which you'll get a chance to see a few images in just a minute. You can't help but watch those images and look at the parents and think what that organization is doing for the parents. You can't help but look at the volunteers. Has anybody volunteered for Special Olympics? Yeah? When you volunteer for Special Olympics, it's awesome. I mean, you show up saying, I'm here to support the athletes. What do you need me to do? And by the end of the day, you're saying, okay, who's helping who here? I just got a perspective on overcoming adversity with courage, determination, and joy. And what am I making out of what God has given me? What am I doing with the gifts that I have? Look what they're doing. So an incredible lesson learned through Special Olympics. That led to me being on the board of Special Olympics Southern California, and then I had the chance of serving as chairman of the board for 10 years. During that time, my career continued to progress, and I became an executive producer and then head of programming production for Fox Sports West, and then I oversaw production for the regional networks across the country, which got harder and harder to do. I thought I was on the trajectory to be the president of NBC Sports or ESPN, and had an agent. And things got really difficult at home with Kelly, with her situation, and me on the road. My son was just starting playing sports in high school. And out of the blue, I'll say out of the blue several times during this presentation, but out of the blue, I get a call from someone who was a friend in the business who had become president and general manager of KCAL, Channel 9, home of the Lakers, and wanted to build it into a sports channel, and said, why don't you come get off the road and come, I can't pay you what you're making, but come and we'll have some fun. So we decided to make a lifestyle change, resigned my agent, took less money, and it was the best decision I had made in my life. Soon became station manager for KCAL. CBS bought us and became station manager and eventually president and general manager of both television stations, Channel 2 and Channel 9. During that time, I was chairman of the board of Special Olympics Southern California. And then adversity hit again. My boss retired. The new guy came in and decided he was going to bring in his own team. We call it regime change in television. And I was fortunate enough that I had some time left on my contract to figure out what I was going to do next. Out of the blue, the head of Special Olympics International, Tim Shriver, Eunice Kenny Shriver's brother and son of the founder, Eunice Kenny Shriver, called me because I was chair of Southern California and said, would Southern California be interested in hosting the World Games? So I got with Mayor Villaraigosa and got all of the people together, and we put together a bid committee, and we went after it. And while we were going after it, it was coming up. By the way, the World Games, Special Olympics, if you're not familiar, 5 million athletes with intellectual disabilities in 180 countries around the world, 50,000 events held around the globe on an annual basis. And then the World Games is the signature event, alternating between summer and winter, just like the Olympics. I'd been in Dublin and Shanghai, and it was soon to be in Athens, Greece, while we were bidding. And so just before we were going to Athens, Greece, to take a team and watch all the activities and learn, I went to the doctor because I was really sick. And I said to the doctor, I can't get on a plane in 2 days unless you make me well. And so he and the nurse walked out, and just a minute later, the nurse stuck her head into the door and said, can we talk? I'm like, can we talk? Do you know how bad I feel right now? And she came in, and she quietly kept glancing over her shoulder, making sure nobody was coming in. She said, I moved to this country 3 years ago. I'm from the Philippines with my mom, my husband, and my 5-year-old son who has intellectual disabilities. My son has never been out of our apartment in 3 years. My husband will not accept him as our child because he has intellectual disabilities, and it's a curse. In our country, if you have a child born with intellectual disabilities, it's because you did something wrong. And she said, I hear you're going to the World Games. Is there something we can do to encourage my family for my son to be more engaged in the community? And so I told her a few things, and I immediately just blurted out, my daughter has cerebral palsy. I believe she's a unique creation of God, special purpose in life, touches people like no one else can. It's just one of those moments where you're like, okay, this is for a reason. And so she left, and it hit me. Here I am going to Greece to bid for the World Games. And I get a firsthand account from somebody from another country around the world about the impact of people with intellectual disabilities. And then it hit me, she's not in the Philippines, she's in Los Angeles. And with this diverse community that we have, how many other people are living with the stigma of a child with intellectual disability and thinking that it's a curse on their life? So I got well quick and went to Greece. And when we won the bid, and they asked me if I would serve as CEO for 5 years to put the games together. And I said yes. We started from scratch. We had to raise $100 million. I know that sounds ridiculous, but compared to Olympic Games, it's relatively small. There would be 6,500 athletes coming to this market. This was in 2015. From 164 countries, 25 sports over 10 days, opening ceremony at the Coliseum, and we're starting from scratch, and we built a team of about 450 people. And it was the most incredible moment. Terry Franson, where are you? Terry was just telling me he was at opening ceremonies, and he's been to Olympics and coached in Olympics, multiple Olympics. He said that opening ceremony was the moment of his Olympic life, of watching those athletes and paying homage. The team was from ESPN. And by the way, the purpose of the World Games was acceptance and inclusion, courage, determination, joy, but the real purpose was to change the hearts and minds of people without intellectual disabilities. This is going to be an amazing opportunity for people with intellectual disabilities, life-changing for 6,500 athletes. But they represent 200 million people around the world with intellectual disabilities. So the greatest thing we could do is to change the hearts and minds of us without intellectual disabilities, so that kids befriend them in school, so that employers hire them for jobs. And so I was able to get ESPN to be our official broadcast partner. I have so many stories, by the way, I won't go into them all. But ESPN was an amazing partner, and all I challenge them with is we're looking for a partner who will get these amazing stories in front of as many eyeballs as possible so that we can change hearts and minds towards people with intellectual disabilities. Their opening ceremony crew was the crew that produced the national championship football game for ESPN. The moment when the torch came into the Coliseum, and we had the 7 countries of the world that Special Olympics is in, and there was pairs from each of those continents, not countries, continents. And at the moment where 2 Special Olympic athletes from Iran handed the torch to 2 athletes from Israel, who handed the torch to 2 athletes from Cuba, who handed the torch to 2 athletes from the United States. At that moment, the director in the truck, their national championship director, got so choked up he couldn't call cameras. And there was an audible gasp in the truck because everybody was feeling the same tension. After the opening ceremonies, Kate Jackson, the producer, came up to me at the hotel and said, "Patrick, what do I do? I just turned 40 and I just helped change the world. How do I make producing college football be meaningful anymore?" So a remarkable opportunity. The World Games, you'll see the logo in this video I'm going to show you in just a minute. But the World Games logo was a celebratory pose representing the courage, determination, and joy of the athletes. You often see our athletes striking the pose as they cross the finish line. With Special Olympics, though, it's often the 5th or 6th place finisher who just did his very best, but he felt like set the world record. Inside the circle of acceptance and inclusion, which was our mission, creating awareness that leads to acceptance and inclusion. And then the multicolors, 19 different colors derived from flags of the world, represented the diversity of 164 countries coming to this diverse market and how we could change hearts and minds in every corner of this diverse market. So with that little prelude, I want you to take a look at how the community came together. And as you look at these athletes, look at their courage, determination, and joy. Look at them overcoming adversity, and look at how people celebrated their lives. So check out this video. You know, the theme of Special Olympics is transforming lives through the power of sports and all the great things that can happen through sports of courage, determination, overcoming adversity, working hard, self-confidence, all of those good things. And in the lives of people, we see that in the lives of the athletes. My favorite story of the World Games was a young guy named Michael Leone. We had an invitational games, which was kind of a test games a year out from the World Games. And I had this photographer assigned to me, Corey, who He shot for Justin Timberlake and Paul McCartney, and someone said, you ought to volunteer for World Games or come out and shoot. So he was assigned to me, and at one point he says, do you mind if I take some pictures of the athletes going to do this relay? And I said, sure. I said, but make sure you get a picture of Michael over there. He's in a blue tank top, and a family friend goes to our church. And so he takes these pictures, and that night he sends me 6 pictures, are the best 6 pictures I've ever seen in Special Olympics. And one of them's of Michael holding the baton, smiling. And so the next day, I come across his mom, Kathy, who's a coach. I said, Kathy, you got to see these pictures. And I told her that, I didn't tell her that Michael's one of them. So I had these 6 pictures, and Michael was the last one. So I started taking her through the pictures, and she's like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. Oh, that's amazing. When I hit Michael, she dropped her head down and she started to cry. And she said, we don't have any pictures of Michael smiling in our house. Every time there's a camera around, Michael's got his head down. He's shy and he's embarrassed. And so those 6 pictures, coincidentally, just by chance, Kaiser Permanente gave us their float for the Rose Parade. And it was going to have a pictorial, 6 pictures. And those 6 pictures were going to be the pictorial going around the thing. So Mike was one of them. And so I went to show him the drawing, and I said to his folks, do you think he'll like it? And they said, well, he won't say anything, but if he likes it, he'll go. So I show him the picture, and Michael. So we're sitting with him on Colorado Boulevard. The float comes by, just an incredible moment. The next week, Special Olympics Southern California calls Michael and says, Michael, would you be willing to be a global messenger? That's our athletes that are trained to tell their story. And his parents are like, there's no way. And Michael was, yes. I was on the float that was seen around the world. Yes, I want to be a global messenger. So Michael went through a weekend training, and his first chance to speak, I was speaking at a host town in Glendale, and I gave my presentation and then introduced Michael. And so I stood to the side of the podium, very close, because sometimes our athletes get stuck on a word or get nervous and you got to give them encouragement. Michael got up there and just belted it. Defeat is not in my vocabulary, he says. And as he just starts telling his story, one of our staff members who's videotaping it and knows Michael's family as well, tears are just coming down her cheeks. And the amazing moment of that moment was, I said that we knew them from church. We've known them for 10 years. It was the first time I ever heard Michael's voice, let alone say something. It's the first time I ever heard his voice. So Special Olympics in the World Game gave Michael his voice, to the point where we can't get him to shut up now. He speaks everywhere. In fact, this last week, Crescenta Valley High School had an inclusion week leading up to the regional games for Special Olympics that they were hosting. And they had an inclusion ceremony or assembly. And Michael was the keynote speaker. So remarkable, transforming lives through the power of sports and all that Goodwill does. When the games were over, I thought I was 5-year hiatus from media, and I was talking to people, figuring out what I was going to do. And out of the blue, Korn Ferry calls me, the search firm, and somebody had recommended me for the president and CEO of Goodwill Southern California. And like all of you, I thought Goodwill is where you get rid of your stuff, right? How many people? Come on, that's where you get rid of your stuff, right? Or it's where you buy inexpensive thrift stuff when you need a costume for Halloween. So I discover, as I'm looking into the job, that their theme is transforming lives through the power of work. Gee, that sounds pretty familiar. And then found out that it's all about transforming lives through the power of work and putting people to work with barriers to employment. People coming out of prison, veterans, at-risk youth, people with disabilities, and the homeless. We have 85 stores. Goodwill Southern California is LA, Riverside, San Bernardino counties. We have 85 stores, 46 collection centers, and all of them exist for one purpose, and that's to transform lives through work. Both directly, we have 3,000 employees, 500 have intellectual disabilities as an example. But then the proceeds or the contribution, we call it, from our stores go to support our career work source centers, of which we have 4. And this last year, 32,000 people went through those work source centers to get counseling and training and get their GED and get placed. A remarkable untold story founded on Olvera Street at the Plaza 100 years ago Goodwill, Southern California. So to hear that and to see that, that became my new vocation. And I also learned that there was an opportunity here, because just like Special Olympics, I'd walk into a corporate office and say, hey, I'm here to talk about the World Games, and he would say, oh, that's great. That's right after the Olympics. No, that's Paralympics. Well, what's the difference? Well, that's physical disabilities. This is intellectual disabilities. So there was a need to educate. And so we started calling it Opening Eyes in the World Games. We want to tell the story, like I told you, of 5 million athletes, 180 countries, 50,000 events. Open people's eyes where they go, wow, I had no idea. And then inspire, tell stories, tell Michael Leone's story, show videos, inspire people, and then engage them. Then ask them. So you've got their head around it, you have their heart around it, and then now you not only get a yes, you get a partner. You get somebody who says, what else can I do? So we're doing that with Goodwill right now, and that's what attracted me so much, was how much we could raise the bar at Goodwill. So I expect all of you, one, to be ambassadors of Goodwill, tell the true story of what Goodwill's about, but to donate and to shop there goes towards serving an awful lot of people. And again, it's in the lives of those we serve. William just gave his testimony to our board, and William looks like he could be an athlete at SC or UCLA. He gives his testimony, and as he shares that at 17 years old, he was arrested for burglary and tried as an adult, and then he came out of prison at age 31. And the minute he said that, the impact on all of us in the room was just amazing. Whatever mistake he made, to imagine that of someone at 17 coming out at 31. And he said, Goodwill was my first stop, and I went through your LA Rise program, and Miss Robbie runs the program, Robbie Thomas, and Miss Robbie, he kept saying Miss Robbie. She's part mom, part spiritual leader, part drill sergeant. He kept saying Miss Robbie. Miss Robbie kept telling us, whatever you do, you got to own it. Whatever you do, own it. And he looked up and smiled at us and said, nobody owns flooring at Home Depot like I own flooring at Home Depot. Carpet, hardwood, installation, you name it. So then he said one day the supervisor came to him and said, William, we need to move you to closing. And William said, I can't do that. I have a curfew and the bus routes won't get me back to the home in time. And the person said, well, if we had known that, we probably wouldn't have hired you. So naturally, William calls Miss Robbie, thinking that Miss Robbie's going to pick up the phone and take care of it. And Miss Robbie says, William, here's what you need to do. You need to own this. You need to go in and give your 2 weeks notice tomorrow. He's like, 2 weeks notice? I just got this job. And she says, it has to work for you. It has to work for your life. And so the next day he goes in, he's all nervous. A guy who helped recruit him comes over and says, William, how's it going? He says, I'm about ready to give my 2 weeks notice. He says, what did he tell you? He tells the story. He says, you wait right here. Brings back the supervisor, and they say, William, you're not going anywhere. And William looks up at us and smiles and says, just like Miss Robbie said they'd say. So he said, so not only are you helping me get on my feet, you're helping me through the process. And that's what Goodwill is all about. Some quick things that I'd like to share with you is that well, first of all, there's a lot of talent in this room. Whatever your background, whatever your vocation, whatever your gifts can be used for good. I read this during that time when I left CBS and figuring out what I was going to do. I read this article by Peter Drucker that talked about a parallel career and that everyone should have a parallel career. It might be a hobby, might be a passion, might be church, it might be school board, it might be something that is kind of a parallel career, something that you're interested in, because you never know what's going to happen. But it not only be life fulfilling, but if something happens, maybe that's your new career, which happened to me. Special Olympics was that parallel career and had that opportunity. So some of the things that we learned, so first of all, volunteer, whatever it is. If you haven't volunteered for Special Olympics, volunteer for Special Olympics. If you haven't volunteered for your church, do that. You'll be amazed at how much your skills make a huge difference in your community. And to do that, to help change hearts and minds, just 3 quick things. One is educate, inspire, and engage. I talked about that. Learn to do that. Learn to educate and inspire and engage as you learn communication skills to bring somebody along to change their hearts and minds towards something that you're interested in. And then the principles of marketing, the key principles of communication, the key to effective communication, which I learned in television, was know your audience. And in television, we're absolutely obsessed with 25 to 54, 18 to 32, male, female. But it's the most effective tool for communication, effective community. Who's my audience? What's my message? How do I deliver it in a way that evokes the desired response? In television, it's you want them to laugh, you want them to cheer, you want them to cry, you want them to vote. And in family life, with kids, with the spouse, with your coworkers, with your church members, all of that is taking the time to know who your audience is. Now, that can sound really manipulative, huh? Unless it comes with integrity. And integrity and empathy, I think, are two critical attributes. Integrity, that you do what you say you're going to do. Integrity is like the magic of compounded interest that somebody taught me when I was young. If you put a little bit of money away when you're young, by the time you get, it'll be up here. If you wait, then it'll be down here. If you make strong decisions and ethical decisions and build that integrity, then when things go wrong, when those disappointments happen, people will have your back and people will trust you. People will also trust you when you pitch something to them because you know you're not trying to manipulate them, but you care about them. And empathy, I think, is at the top of the list. I think the ability to have empathy and realize if you look at those athletes, that they are unique creations, that they're valuable, that in many ways are the way we were intended to be. They laugh when they're sad. They laugh when they're happy. They cry when they're sad. There's no pretense. Empathy for people means that you care about them and you want to know about them. And that's an opportunity to find out needs and opportunities in the community to make a difference, to transform lives in whatever opportunity that you have, and to change hearts and minds. So appreciate it very much. Thank you.